Well, hello, I'm Chris Gibbs of Urbandale. I support an intact middle school, high school feeder system. I'm speaking as a parent of 3 children in the Waukee district, a 3rd grader, a 6th grader, and an 8th grader. I also happen to be a physician specializing in gastrointestinal and liver disease. Though I am not an expert in either mental illness or mental health or childhood education, I do feel that my professional experience informs my views regarding the topic at hand. I'd like to offer a couple of points. The vast majority of my work is consultative, meaning that other physicians and providers refer patients to me for my expert opinion. Like any expert, I don't always get it right, but I'm usually not far off the mark. I also recognize the importance of seeking others' expert opinions when a patient's problem extends beyond my own scope of practice. In medical and non-medical fields alike, experts are able to assess the evidence, identify gaps in data, and combine book smarts with street smarts when formulating recommendations. Wisely, our school board obtained an expert opinion from our superintendent, Dr. Buck. I would encourage all board members to heed his expert advice. That's not to say I'm advocating blind acceptance. By all means, ask questions, trust, but verify. But please do not ignore. The second point, as I've mentioned, I'm not a mental health expert. Sadly, however, many of my patients with gastrointestinal disease also have mental health problems. And I observe the negative impact mental illness has on their lives. Unfortunately, even in today's society, mental illness carries significant social stigma. It's not often as conspicuous as a physical ailment. Patients can feel reluctant to discuss symptoms, and access to care can be challenging. Some patients are resilient, but many others are not and instead suffer. So when we talk about the mental health of our children, we ought to keep in mind that not all are resilient. And the least resilient are precisely those most at risk for the worst outcomes. We recognize this paradigm with COVID, a primarily physical illness. Some favored masking in school during the COVID pandemic, despite the vast majority of children being resilient and not suffering serious COVID-related illness. The rationale was to protect our most vulnerable students, including those with immunosuppression and chronic illness. But when it comes to mental illness, as opposed to physical illness, why don't we take a similarly inclusive approach? Why do we assume that all students are resilient with respect to mental health, when we would never suggest that be true regarding physical health? I suspect that at least some degree of implicit bias regarding mental illness within our society at large plays a role. Thank you for your time.
Jody Schrage, please.
Hi, my name is Jody Schrage, Urbandale. I have been attending or paying attention to board meetings for 9 years within this district. Sadly, this is a school board that does not currently care about the rights of parents. Sadly, this is a school board that thinks they know more than what is in the best interest of parents' children's, and they're not doing what is in the best interest of students. I agree with the grandfather, Kopatich, last Thursday, who said that this school board gets an F. They also get an F from trying to limit parents' ability to speak and the time to speak. Like I said, I've been going and paying attention to this school board for 9 years. Last year, Lori Lyon, when she was the head of the school board, decided that the school board, the community members should only get 30 minutes to speak, and that needs to be reversed. If you have more parents that want to speak, then you need to allow them to speak at school board meetings. The school board gets an F in 2020. As 2020, we had Dr. Buck, who said that he recommended the kids go to school during COVID, went through all the work, made sure that it was safe, and we had Lori Lyon, Wendy Marsh, and Alex Smith, who voted for your kids not to be in school. You wonder why your kids are in school? It was because we had 4 other board members who were moderate, and they consistently voted for our kids to be in school. It does make a difference, the makeup of your school board. so you're all aware, crazily, this school board is all made up of Democrats. They are all liberal. I paid attention to the November 2021, I think they are. I paid attention to the November, 6 of you are. I paid attention to the November 2021 school board election. You were all together going to the Democratic things, so please don't tell me that you're not. It's important, the makeup of a school board. You have to listen to parents. You have to take consideration that God has blessed these parents with these kids and do what they feel is in the best interest of their kids. And you have to take consideration what Dr. Buck and all of his experience is telling you to do. I can give you an example. When Dan Gilbaugh was elected, he was on the school board, he was elected in November to go down to the Iowa House of Representatives. He suggested that we add to the school board an individual who received 4,000 votes, that she received over 4,000 votes to be on this school board, and you guys chose not to take her on and not to elect her to the school board. Instead, you chose somebody else. So I truly hope that the school board, and we're pleading with you to please set aside your agenda and pay attention to what the parents want. Thank you.
Courtney Collier, please.
Courtney Collier, Waukee. It was said that your decision was made based upon longevity and stability for the district. It's clear from almost 3 hours of comments last week that we as a community do not feel that you made a decision with a priority on what was best for the students involved. You were willing to experiment with or test our children's adaptability to make things easier on the adults. To that, I will just say, shame on you. You ignored the recommendation of the superintendent as well as the hundreds of parents and students who communicated their desire for 2B. These are our children, and we will, as one parent said last week, never quit fighting for their best interests. We also learned through a public records request that you were deceiving the community with unlawfully negotiating your public board votes out of the public eye. Again, shame on you if you were involved. You were entrusted to lead this board with integrity and to be good stewards of the dollars you are entrusted with for our children's education. We can no longer, as a community, trust you to do these things. And you are not above the law. Regardless of your decision tonight, and I do hope you make the correct one and approve option 2B, we need to have a public conversation about your lack of integrity and your double standards when it comes to walking the talk, as you say. You have failed. Not only do members of this board owe a public apology for the things that were said about the families in this district based upon where they live, as well as for your violation of open meetings laws, you are also accountable to us for the way you spend the education dollars you are entrusted with. Both of the feeder options have a cost involved, and since this board likes to talk about how funding is always insufficient, might I suggest the following proposal to cover the cost with option 2B. Let's start with eliminating the wasteful spending, also known as pork, with the unnecessary position of the Director of Student Equity. This is a $120,000 position, plus or minus. It's useless to our district. It's only served to promote division and confusion in our student body with divisive curriculum and an agenda that matches. It's important that everyone here and everyone listening is made aware, if not already, that Lindsay Law, the Director of Student Equity, was found on video last spring bragging about how she circumvents Iowa law with her divisive curriculum. She also mocked and belittled the parents who opposed it. How can we be surprised that this is tolerated by you when you have acted with such deception and disregard for the law? In closing, we as a community will not tolerate this unethical and unlawful actions from you, the board, or anyone but in the district employed by you. We have both legal remedies and ballot box remedies available to us. It's time to bring balance and integrity and equal representation to this board. Thank you.
Colleen Powell, please.
Hi, I'm Colleen Powell. I live in Waukee. Well, I live in Clive. I have two students in the Waukee School District, a second grader and a sixth grader. And I am here tonight, I think a lot of us are, for an explanation. I think we just really need to understand the passion behind option 1A and why the board decided to go against a recommendation from Dr. Buck, the recommendation from the community and the parents, and the recommendation from the students. This has not been as crystal clear for us as it is for all of you, and I think it would go a long way. I know after the vote in December, and probably like many of you thought, I just thought, I'm missing something. There's a piece of the puzzle, there's information I'm not privy to, and maybe that would help. And I think that led to a lot of speculation. I know some of us thought this could be about educators at the middle school level who threatened to leave if we went with option 2B. And during a time when educators are hard to find, I empathize with that. But then I think we want to know how many people are we talking about and how difficult will it be to fill those shoes? There was a lot of discussion about financial reasons, that option 2B is not fiscally responsible. And as previously mentioned, I think we would need to see those very convincing numbers as to why option 1A is such a more fiscally sound option in a time where we are having a difficult, when we're having difficulty getting bus drivers to drive our regular routes. I guess I'm not totally convinced that we'll find more bus drivers to drive kids around with this, which is part of option 1A. And then there's also some discussion that option 1A maybe makes more sense because there are a couple of elementary schools that we would rather filter into or funnel into Waukee South instead of Northwest. And that is something that, has been on the table for a little bit. And I think the feeling is if that is the case, if there are elementary schools that maybe somewhere in the future are not intended to funnel into Northwest and maybe funneling into Waukee, let's just rip off that Band-Aid and have an honest conversation about it. In closing for me tonight, what I would like to see is just an explanation. If we are going with option 1A, there just needs to be more convincing, and not in a way that me or these parents understand, but in a way that all of these kids who are here tonight can understand, because they are the ones who will be impacted. Thank you.
Joey Tonemaker.
Thank you for hearing us out. I am the parent, Joey Tonemaker, West Des Moines, Waukee students. I'm the parent of two children in the Waukee School District. I have a daughter who's in 6th grade at South Middle School and a son who's a 4th grader at Maple Grove Elementary. As school board members, you were voted into this position to be advocates for our children. It seems that that is not what is happening here. The votes have shown what students and the community want, as well as Dr. Buck's recommendation. Most of you currently have children in the Waukee School District and have an investment in it. There are a few that do not and no longer seem to have that interest in the school district itself. No matter what side of the table you're on, whether you're on the right or the left, I feel like politics have really taken a toll on what's been going on here. As a mother of a current 4th grader at Maple Grove, it has already been a challenging year. He has been affected by the Sugar Creek division and is having a pretty tough time. You are now setting him up for another division later on, which makes his school experience no longer a positive one. I understand that growth is inevitable and change will happen, but at the detriment of our children. Middle school is hard enough, and these kids and their mental state needs to be considered. They are establishing some of the most important relationships during this time. What sense does separating them for 3 years only to be reunited later on with the children that they were once with make? These children have to go from being one unit working together only to be divided after 3 years. During the election, members spoke of protecting mental health, transparency, accountability, parent, staff, and community involvement in communication and decision-making. What happened to this? Thank you for your time.
Joel Templeman.
Good evening. My name is Joel Templeman. I'm a resident of Clive, and I have 3 children in the Waukee School District. I have an 8th grader at Prairie View, 6th grader at Waukee Middle School, and a 3rd grader at Radiant. I'm also a youth basketball coach and have been for many years. I currently coach a 6th grade team, and 6 members of that team are here with me this evening. Boys, could you please stand up? Now, we're not here to rehash anything that was said during the public meeting last Thursday. All these boys go to Waukee Middle School, and they came from either Radiant or Schuler. But we thought it was important to mispractice tonight so that this board could see a few of the faces that will be negatively impacted by your decision. And we ask that you reconsider this item and that you recast a vote for option 2B, consistent with the superintendent's recommendation. Thank you.
Kyle Elfers.
Good evening, board. My name is Kyle Elfers. I live in Clive. Have 3 students in the district, a sophomore at Northwest, freshman at Prairie View, and a 6th grader also at Waukee Middle with these boys. Really, option 2 is the best option. That's what we're recommending. That's what you keep hearing over and over. And it comes to Dr. Buck and his staff made that recommendation. So we think you should follow it. His analysis and the comprehensive review was impressive. There was a lot of data that they went through. And they used a balanced approach. So what I thought was interesting is, they went through enrollment, capacity, academic programming, socioeconomic measures, the intact feeder, student movement, activities, athletics, cost, boundary lines, future growth. And through everything, the balanced decision was option 2. Further, they did the survey, 930 responses, including all constituents. They voted overwhelmingly for concept 2. The intact feeder has been the #1 objective from the district going back a number of years, as was made public in the last couple meetings. So the last point, I guess it's a little bit nuanced that no one's said this evening, is the ninth grade schools, I think, can be a positive. Dr. Buck mentioned on his 11/28 presentation in that board meeting that the 8/9 configuration wasn't meeting educational outcomes desired, and maybe it was a short data set, but that was stated. I think the 9th grade school can be a new transition to high school, where the kids realize grades count. We're seeing that with our own kids, and we're lucky, specifically in Prairie View, that it shares in essence a campus. It's a shared parking lot, so it's pretty interesting that can be the 9th grade school, and really work to be cohesive and within the programming, the scheduling of the overall high school. So I think a 9th grade school works. That really hasn't been said, so I'm just restating that. For those reasons and everything else that's been said tonight, we advocate for concept 2. Thanks.